Anna, you'll introduce.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Dun& Bradstreet launch of the white paper, Smart Digital Transformation, How CIOs are Leading Their Organization's Data Strategy. Today we have with us Mr. Avinash Gupta, Managing Director and CEO, India, Dun& Bradstreet, and Dr. Arun Singh, Global Chief Economist, Dun& Bradstreet. We first start with you, Avinash, to introduce the paper. Over to you, Avinash.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to join us. As you guys know, late last year and early this year, we spent a lot of time talking to the broader market, some of our clients and some of other folks, in terms of things which had impacted people over the last year, given COVID and a whole bunch of other things. And these are a series of kind of discussion white papers which we are able to bring out given that experience and given that outreach. So hope you find them useful. We had one a while ago, I think a couple of weeks ago, on the impact the COVID had caused on the broader SME and MSME sector. And we were quite good to get some feedback from you, most of you as well, and we'll appreciate that again. So some of those things which we talked about last time have been fed into the broader ecosystem, the regulatory system, some of the banking system. And I hope, some of these discussions which we have in this virtual community, we are able to take takeaways and put them out into the broader market. So I think today is even more fun, I guess, to talk about, but obviously because this is, I guess, an ongoing I would say evolving process in terms of what's happening on the digital transformation, and clearly in terms of I guess the C-suite, the CIO becoming an even important part of that community in terms of managing the data strategy of large, mid and small organizations, and using the power of data and the power of that organizing their data to become a competitive advantage effectively for the organization and for that person as well. So along with me, I've got my colleague, Dr. Arun Singh, who's our Global Chief Economist, who will walk you through a lot of the findings of the study. But just to open it up, if I could say a few things, I think just moving on in terms of the agenda on the next slide. I mean, really, we are looking at hoping to cover three quick things and possibly, have an interaction if there's any at the end. In terms of, the challenges which you all see, maybe more closely than we do in terms of the chaos around data. And then obviously we'll talk to you about the findings of the study as well. And then how can we possibly at Dun & Bradstreet help you in organizing some of this better. So moving to the data chaos challenge, I guess, I mean, this is the data is the new oil. We've all heard things like that for a while now. I think it's beginning to sink into everybody how chaotic life can be if things are not invested in properly, like I guess in the oil and gas sector as well. In our daily lives, it feels like everything we touch today turns into data. I think it is personally and both for individuals and for business an overwhelming situation. Everything is automated. What was analog is now digital, and data rides everything. So I think unless one can get this right, one can manage this better. This is only going to overwhelm us. And that's the focus of the study and the focus of the white paper in many ways. Now, possibly to open it up, there are some interesting realities to consider. I mean, the first obviously is that data is growing so fast that possibly we've arguably lost the ability to even measure the rate of increase. There's so many things which can be structured together which are just impossible to track and capture and measure. I mean, most of this data is not in any structured manner. It's not on the web. It is embedded in various things like transactions, passwords, Internet of Things, or even possibly hidden in the dark web. Possibly we can't simply search our way out of the situation. And obviously not all data is correct. Not all data is true. possibly not all true data is true simultaneously as well. More and more data contains biases that can dramatically impact personal decisions, business decisions, and clearly through possibly better management of data, one is able to limit those wrong decisions to a large extent. So what in an ideal world should be a very happy situation of perfect data, creating perfect insights, is not actually the scenario. It is leading to a lot of chaos. It is leading to a lot of complications, and it leads to a lot of time and effort being made to sort out those complications as well. I think moving to the next slide in terms of what's happening after that. I mean, obviously, the resulting outcome of data chaos has been that, in organizations, which is what our study will demonstrate, there are multiple departments, region, channels, which are needed to be built, staffed, created, and manage that data just to keep the business running. This results in, multiple instances of CRMs, marketing systems, workflows with different definitions and a lack of cross-functional standard. I mean, all of this is really suboptimal use of resources, which, as we all know, in today's environment more so, really need to be optimized. I mean, all of us are working and working well, surprisingly, but clearly it's not an optimal scenario, and resources, both people-wise, monetary-wise, technology-wise, really need to be optimized. And again, we've seen that, data silos, business silos, while everybody does their own thing, everybody loses sight of the bigger picture. And that's really what then leads to a suboptimal structure where there is neither a good user experience or the business objective, possibly in terms of higher market shares not being captured. There is no common version of truth. And, senior management, business leaders are left wondering as to really what's happening in the field and how could this data have got it how could we have got it so badly wrong? So it's not really to be additive to our business rather than being distractive. So a couple of these phenomena with the federation of data science capabilities, where various parts of the organization can acquire open source tools and capabilities, you can possibly bring things better together and lead to a more harmonious outcome for the business. In terms of moving to the next slide, I think this is again what the study touches on a lot, the costs of poor data management. Almost 50% of the analysts are wasting time hunting for the real truth behind the data. These are from surveys, which we have sourced here, Harvard Business Review, Crowdflower. 60% of data scientists' time is spent cleaning and organizing data. And we've very well all seen that in our own organizations, in our own roles. And it obviously costs a lot more, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of reconciling bad data, after you really got it, and then you have to spend incremental time and money and effort to pull the whole thing together into a form and format which makes it manageable. So clearly from a CIO point of view, from a senior management point of view, from a board point of view, from a capital allocator point of view, running a business this way is just not perfect. It's not sustainable. And as I said, in today's world, I think capital is going to become a lot more, as we know, going forward, capital is going to become a lot more expensive. And this really will be an important criteria. So therefore, it's no surprise that the role of the CIO is even more important. And I guess, as I said in my initial comments, that this will again, I think, one of those C-suite roles which will become incrementally important as we go over a period of time. And that is why we at Dun & Bradstreet thought we'll spend some time and effort in terms of pulling the survey together for the CIO. And happy to now share those findings with you and debate them further as we go along. So I'll hand over to Arun in terms of taking you through some of the findings of the survey, and we will come back and talk about through the Q&A. Thank you, Arun.
Yeah, thank you, Avinash, for such a wonderful introduction. I think your point was well taken and valid across various spectrum of convergence. That's what is happening. Actually, we have seen last few years, and it's the statement, the data is new oil, is basically getting bigger and bigger every day, and that's people have realized the importance of the data. And then more than that, people have realized that if they don't have appropriate data and they have not basically created that data to speak itself, how costly it could be for the businesses, and how impactful it will be on the businesses in terms of the negative impact on their business if they don't have appropriate data, and what you call, they have not taken appropriate call on those data management practices, followed by various organizations across the world. So with that, as Avinash just mentioned, that we did a survey, and in fact we did survey for series of personas, series of people, just to understand that now how they feel during the pandemic and how pandemic has impacted their businesses, and in order to make their businesses sustainable, what they're basically doing, and in order to come out of the business first and the fast forward this recovery framework and minimize the gap, or minimize the concern, which pandemic has thrown. And one persona, basically we reached out to the CIO community just to understand that how smart digital transformation, during the age of in smart digital transformation, how CIOs are leading their organization data strategy. Because I think after government introduction of Digital India initiatives, there's a push to the digital transformation through the various channel, and data is one piece, have gone up. In fact, the traction towards that is basically going up. We have seen that there are 44 mission mode projects implemented by Government of India, and many of that is a great success. And pandemic has just basically forced us to accelerate most of the things, and that's what basically I can see here. When we reached out to you in order to understand what are your strategy in terms of the investment, in terms of best practices, and what future look like. And this is what basically you have displayed your answer. If I have to move next slide. So I'll just touch base a brief on the methodology. Basically, when we reached out to CIO, there was a 3 specific category of question we had, criteria we had, is that what measures, what priorities CIO have taken or basically are taking in order to navigate during the disruption caused by pandemic. And the second, now that's the basically impact of the pandemic. Now the second piece is that how data management challenges and and the steps taken to overcome those challenges. Basically, there are many data management challenges we have seen in the past and today, and in future it will continue to be. But as a CIO community, we can't be basically sitting idle. We need to basically take care of some of those challenges and design a method, design a measures around that, so as at least we can find a solution. So that's the second area. And the third area is purely on the automation. As I will touch based briefly on that where we are on the automation and how we are planning in the future in terms of the adoption of the new age technology. We'll talk about Industry 4, and within Industry 4, what else we are looking at in order to eliminate those data management challenges, those data silos, because we all know, in order to take care of our data, which basically more than data, the new flow of data and getting some insightful from the data, the best way is to have a latest technology, to have a basically some sort of technology which basically making some insightful, making some insights around that. So that was the 3 chief ask or 3 chief category of ask which we had when we basically carried out the survey. We reached out to something around 250 businesses across various sectors, and the revenue pool was more than 500 crore for that, the completing year for most of our sample size. And if in order to industry, if you talk about that, largely from the IT, ITS, BFSI, pharmaceutical, and there are basically some segment from the automotive and the manufacturing as a whole, we covered. Basically, it's a good representation of industry in India in order to understand that which industry, in terms of the industry-wise variation, and which industry is basically leading and which industry is trailing. That's one thing. The second, we reached out to something around 6-7 broader cities, and find out is that's not isolated, is not basically biased towards particular cities, basically across pan India. We try to capture those information and to get a diversity in terms of the response. Now moving to some of the findings which we got under those three elements in terms of key priorities by the CIOs. What is the data management challenges? And the third is the future. But for all three of things, all three aspects, the one critical piece is the budget. All of us need a budget to execute those three areas in order to make company foolproof from a data security perspective or data management perspective in terms of the new age technology, and in order to come out of the data management challenges. What we found, I think more than 60% of the people said their budget is likely used to be at 10% of the total revenue, and there are smaller portion, something around 33% of the people are more than 20%. So quite good percentage I can suggest when I look at the what you call function-wise budget allocation across various organizations. So I think that the 10% of the total for more than 60% of the people, it seems a fair, in terms of the budget allocated during last few years. And when we asked how it looked like after pandemic or during pandemic, if you can go on the next slide, please. So something around same 60% of the people, they said that their budget is likely to remain changed. It's not going to basically, so likely to remain same, in fact, and there's not likely to change. Whereas 40% people, they said it will change, but within 40%, 10% of the people have said it will increase, which means something around 70% of the people have said that post-pandemic, the budget allocated to them is likely to remain same or likely to go up, which means even at a very senior leadership level, at the company level, the people have understood the importance of the data management, importance of this function in order to get the data, get insight from the data, and move on. And as a result of, in fact, as a result of that, one can see that budget allocation to this function is either the same or going up. This hardly, there are 30% people have said either it will remain basically decline or marginal decline. So there are, even in terms of decline, there's a marginal decline one can expect, maybe 1 or 2% of this one, which is not part of this slide, but then it's very marginal decline you're talking about. Now, if you move on the next slide, please. So now coming to the first questions, what we basically asked, that what are the key priorities you have in order to adopt the new normal. Now the pandemic, as I said, have set the context for the next normal or the new normal, and we don't have a choice. We have to basically sail through, otherwise risk of a redundancy anyways, because there's things are moving fast, and the pandemic have just accelerated some of these things. So what we found, something around 52% of the people, and now we are serving the customer from home or remote location, and the serving customer the digitally have thrown one area, and most of the CIO basically talked about that piece is basically data security. And that's what one can see, that 52% of us, 52% of the CIO community feel that data security is the most priority, and they need to secure the data and enabling tool and data transmission tool in order to ensure that the data is safe and secure. 48% I've said that how they can basically emphasize in order to have an enabling remote workforce, which means not just short term, it's a long term period, because they started preparing themselves for having a long term what you call work from home sort of environment, and that's what basically they are moving. And 46% of they just want to serve better, serve more to the customer digitally. Now, data management during the pandemic, what they have said, 57% of them, they said, using data security tools to secure their home environment. That's coinciding with the fact that 52% of the people have stated their priorities to be a data security, and that's basically coinciding. Whereas other side of equation, if you see the 42% of CIOs said that restricting access to the data is their topmost priority in order to support their data security, in order to support workforce working from the digitally and support their client base. So that was a few priorities what all of you have basically answered towards some of the priorities during the new normal. Now, if you go on the next slide, please. One thing actually it came out very loud and clear, during this survey, and what I can say, the change perception today. In fact, before pandemic, if I have to look at the bigger goal of CIO's function, if you look at this, basically they are driving operational efficiency and reducing the cost. But now, during this surge and during the pandemic and going forward, what we call a new normal, 55%, more than 50% of you have said the value creation is now, in fact, value creation is now new goal has been, associated with that CIO community. In fact, they are now a part of the organization where you bring in those value to the table rather than just focusing on the operational efficiency or reducing costs. So that things came loud and clear, which means that more and more companies are looking up to the CIO community to ensure that they have something what we call data management strategy to bring something on the table in terms of how fast they are able to serve the customer, how fast they are able to generate some insights from those data, so as that can be taken into the value creation for the organization. So if you move on the next slide, please. Some of the data collection, this is basically the second action item, what we looked at, what we asked, some basic areas where how most of the CIOs basically, what method they use in order to collect the data. 53% just on data tracking, followed by 31% by through the primary ways and through third parties or data companies. That around 30% people have 30% of CIOs basically use those as a tool for data collection. Now, if you go on the next slide, so method deployed to improve data quality. Today, what we have seen in the survey, that data profiling and control of incoming data, something around 47% of the CIOs have opted for that. That's the one method to improve the data quality. And why I'm saying most of you have raised the concern that the moment the new data arrive, it's very difficult to find out some insight, and it's clueless what to do about those new data set, because that new data carries some values, some insight, but unfortunately we don't know how to find some solution out of that. And that was coming out loud and clear from the from that stuff. 26% of you have said that follow to best practices for the data quality management across various organizations across the globe. Now, if you move to the next slide, please. So now data management and data management challenges is basically the part of second thing. So now that was the data management, what we call the data collection and data management method what most of you have said. Now, in the previous slide, I was talking about when you get a new set of data, when you manage the real-time, what you call the real-time analytics, 52% of you have said that that's the biggest challenge. That's the biggest challenge. One, that you got a data, what to do about this one, what analysis, what insight one can draw. That's basically clueless about this one, because 90% of the data are generated in the last few years, which basically ensures that the moment we go next 10 years or 20 years, those pile of data will just go up, which means if the real-time data analytics and the management is a concern, then that's a really scary picture. And then, you have the data security, the 50% of you have said, or managing a big data, 30%, or challenges with the data integration is a 30%. So there are many 5-6 areas we found where most of CIOs find a data management as a challenging tool. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so now data management is one area. How to find a solution for a data management challenges is basically another area which which we also ask, and most of you have replied to this one. 56% of you said that invest in the more technology, and that's what basically I was trying to say earlier, that now investment in the technology, in fact, that's what we call the nice to, we're shifting from what we call the nice to have to the must have status, and that's the need, because you're getting a significant amount of data. Just to manage that data manually, certainly not possible. So which means there's an investment happening in those technology, and you're talking about the skill set, just Avinash touched based in terms of the data scientists, data professionals. 50% something around of you have said that hiring more data professional will ensure that you have a data and you have a basically what you call doing finding some analysis from that. 30% of you said taking help from the service provider, outside company. Basically 3 core areas coming in. One, putting money into the technology, putting money in terms of the skill enhancement, and hiring a third party service provider in terms of the data analytics, and then finding some insight from the data. That's what basically most of you have said in order to come out from the data management challenges. If you move on the next slide, please. Yeah, these are the, this is another, in fact, challenges in using the full potential of data. Most of you said the high cost of data solutions, poor data quality, data integration, lack of skilled workers, and compliance issues. Basically, this is the part of the data management challenges, and hence those 3 areas cited on the previous slide assume a lot of importance and assume a lot of basically focus from most of the organization. Basically, if you move on the next slide, please. Yeah, now this brings me to the third question area and the third part of a survey, which basically talks about the automation. Now we spoke about the importance of the data. We spoke about during pandemic, how the perception and the priorities and the goal of CIOs have changed, and what are the challenges all of us have faced last few years, and especially during the pandemic, which brings in the third things what we are talking about. And I said that they're putting money into the new technology, hiring data professionals, and and hiring a third party specific to the automation, specific to the technology, specific to the what the future look like. If you see that 57%, in fact, nearly 3 in 5 businesses are using automation for managing or refreshing data at this point of time. Going forward, another what we call the 1 in 5 businesses will try without any hesitation, which means if I have to summarize, 4 out of 5 businesses what we have interviewed, either they are using automation or they are planning to use automation without any hesitation. Even the 1 out of 5 businesses, there are significant number of companies said that they might try because they have understood, because that's the only area they can find a way to find some insight from the data or remove the data issues or remove the data silos. If you go into the next slide, please. Now, this is about basically I talked about the skill set, and I said that you're putting money into the increasing skills, skill sets of 46%, or in fact more than 40% of people have said about the data security expert, data scientist, hiring or increasing the skill within the organizations. So that was the second area of what you call focus area or investment area going forward for most of the organization which we surveyed. The next slide, please. Yeah. So with that, I'll come to in fact, last few slide of what is basically for all of us and what basically key takeaways from this surveys. And one top things is coming out, right on the first is that now CIO's goal have changed. Is not just bringing operational efficiency or reducing cost. The goal has moved to create a drive a value creation for most of the organization basically, and bringing all those functions, the data silos or inside data, outside data, and drive some value from that and support the organization from that side. Now, 1 in 2 organizations find it challenging to obtain meaning from the data as soon as it arrives. That's what I'm saying. The moment it comes, 50% of the organization have absolutely no clue about what to do about this data, which basically they generated yesterday or day before yesterday. 56% of you have said, have a investment plant into the new technology, and they're changing the status from nice to have, must have status going forward, which means putting money into putting money into the CIO's function and the data. 2 in 5 CIOs agree that their businesses is facing challenge in using the full potential of the data, which means the longer they want to evolve their data management practice, the higher will be the cost of data management, which means I think this is the right time to ensure that we follow the data management practices. Otherwise, the cost of not doing will be so high of, in fact, doing those activities. So I think it's always better to have a lower number of, lower percentage in terms of the cost by implementing the data management practices. So if you can go on the last few slide of area, basically how DNB as an organization can help in order to overcome the data challenge, data silos, what insight one can draw, and basically what it mean for the data, not just small amount of data is what basically talk about the large set of the data, because anyways, globally, we, that we are 425 million database record globally. So that's a huge and one of the biggest database repository in the world. And from that sense, we just want to talk about some of the areas where DNB can partner, DNB can help, DNB can support each and every organization on this call. If you go on the next slide. So there basically, there are 4 common requirements to mastering your data. One is a structure, connectivity, coverage, and the quality. Let's start with basically what you call the most fundamental and most foundational aspect, which is the structure. You need to standardize structure or data modules, for data models, for your relationship, and for the most important data you have about those relationships. The 4 component on the focus on basically any entity you have is basically any entity with its own unique identifier or key, its hierarchy, its location, and its role. If you have a standardized structure and common definition across the enterprise for those 4 components, a lot of data problem go away. Through the Dun and Bradstreet Dunn's number, we can help, we provide you with what you call the most critical component of structure, the unique, persistent, and globally consistent key that bridges your data silos internally and also bridges your internal data with the data in the outside world. Now that's basically, that's basically what we call the structure component of those key master data requirement. The second part is basically, the structure need connectivity across the entire data ecosystem, across all 4 different systems and the processes, both internally, what we call across your sales channel, and then externally, what we call, your third parties and partners. If you apply your common data structure across all those different types of workforce and processes, then this data comes together much more seamlessly. Ideally, this data should also flow into the, across your different processes, workflows, and enterprise systems. Now, coming to the third element, the master data needs to have a coverage. What is that? The appropriate level of coverage to manage and grow your businesses. In order for, first 2 requirement, to make an impact on your businesses, you need to ensure that you have access to majority of your relevant business universe, which means what you call, it doesn't mean, or it, it does not require that data should sit in-house today. In fact, that data should be available within your data ecosystem, so have visibility across what you call across various function whenever it's required, whenever it's needed, which means not just to having a coverage, also making available to the various people who are basically going to use this one. And a fourth aspect is basically quality, and that's very emotional, very emotional, the point, and it's very subjective data requirement. A lot of people have an opinion around quality. But at DNB, we have what we call the robust and specific view of quality that includes accuracy, what is basically, ability to verify against multiple sources or against an external authority. That's basically what we call accuracy. The second is basically completeness, timelines, what is basically the latency, and cross-border consistency. That's basically we talk about quality of the data, and that's how we differentiate the term quality recognized in DNB and the term quality recognized outside DNB. So with that, I will move to that was basically the 4 key master data requirement areas, and that's basically our role in that. Now with that, I'll move into the last slide for today. Is basically, and we'll be happy on these 6 areas. I'm not going to basically talk about because I think we're running behind schedule. Is basically, we'll be happy to provide you what are the basically best master data management in terms of the best practices followed within DNB and outside DNB across various organizations. When we basically talk to the customer, we see the same common issues everywhere. In fact, so the same standard fundamental best practices apply, understanding your maturity, creating identifiers, managing hierarchies and relationship, integrating disparate data sources, enriching, and of course, managing, what you call change and governance. So that's basically 6 areas we try to cover up, no matter what type what type of businesses you are in. You are going to run into the same kinds of challenges, and we want you to help. We want to help you by in fact by sharing our best practices approach and with partnering going ahead in terms of removing those data silos and the data concerns around that. So with that, with closing remark, I'll close my presentation, and we're happy to answer any queries, any questions if you have. Thank you.
You can ask your questions in the chat box. We are open to questions now. Dr. Singh, the first question comes is how many of the respondent was from the healthcare? To my understanding, this must be 10 to 15%, right?
Yeah. Yes,
Yes.
you're right.
Yeah, so that's 10 to 15% is what the percentage of the healthcare technology companies, as you mentioned. There's a question coming that there's a lot for Avinash for you. There's a lot of buzz and optimism about the potential of future technologies such as AI and machine learning in moving data, standard coverage, etc. But when do you think these technologies will become the mainstream from the current prototype phase? I mean, it's from new to when it become like the main thing is your understanding.
Right. I think, thanks for the question. I think, I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you exactly the year, but I think the only comment one can make and one takeaway, which one can also take away from the last, 14, 15 months or so, is that it'll be definitely sooner than one anticipated. I think the steps, and the progress being made is phenomenal. The amount of intellectual capital available is phenomenal, although not unlimited. The amount of capital, financial capital available, of course, is phenomenal and maybe unlimited right now. So I think that's what typically, pushes things through in terms of the capabilities being there and the need being there. And the need is, of course, humongous. So I would imagine it's a lot sooner. And lot sooner in a very much more meaningful way as to make real impact in terms of how things are done. So I think and elements of all of this is already in place and being utilized. And I think the need will drive the transformation and the timing around it. If that helps, I can ask Dr. Arun also to add to that. If Arun, you have something to add to that.
No, thanks, Avinash. I think you're right. I think in that sense, sooner will be the better. And because if I have to go back 250 years of industrial revolution, unfortunately, Industry 1, Industry 2, Industry 3, we missed the bus. And we have seen the repercussion from a third-based country in the world on a scale of top 7 countries. We lost battle. Now we are the 7th in the ranking, which means every industrial revolution, we lost the battle. Now I think we cannot afford to lose the battle now. I think sooner will be the better. That's one thing I would say.
Thanks.
The next question is for you, that one of the common hurdles we face in that our data owners say the data is good enough already. But even if they agree that there's a scope of improvement, we always think that, we are there, but we are not sure where to start. Where do you think that people should really, how can people be so sure that where to start the data journey, data cleaning journey?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Nona, for this. See, when we counsel our clients and prospects and on how to sell these programs into their own organization, we basically tell them to focus on a structure and definition first, rather than start with the quality. In fact, a lot of quality problems are really due to the lack of what we call the structure, uniqueness, hierarchies, proper segmentations, and standard geographic definition. In fact, if you look at that from that perspective, the structure is where to start. And luckily, master data management can be done iteratively. And that's basically the first point one should focus on, not all at once. So we have a 4 piece. So let's go by step structure first. And as far as data quality is concerned, you may want to build a universal set of data standard that can help you to confirm the data quality. So, as I said in the couple of slides back, that quality of the data comes the last. Before that, there are 3 areas, and that required a quick intervention. In that sense, we basically, when we talk to customer, we bring those subject of data and master data management and the importance of the master data management, because unless you do that, you'll eventually not reach to the what you call the quality of the data.
A follow-up question on that. When you say start with structure and definition first, do you mean at an enterprise level or at an SBU level?
Yeah. Most company doesn't, in fact, that they don't start with full enterprise-wide program. Some do, but many take a phased approach. Companies can start their journey to enterprise master data at many points. In fact, we often see customers starting with simple project-based data file delivery type of approach. Others start by mastering data at an application level. You talk about the CRM, CRM being the most frequent example. Once the benefit of application level masterings are clear, and then companies often move to adding additional departments and systems that can share the same view, increasing value derived even further. So basically, step-by-step approach I have seen, and that's what basically visible. And eventually, master data should connect across the full enterprise, including the relevant channels and the partners. So not just inside, outside company as a whole, and cover key business relationships. Basically, what you call a customer, partners, vendors, suppliers, all those things required as a part of master data full planning. Just in summary, this can be done in the phased wise approach in a manner to meet a business need, a requirement. Because if you don't have today, then it's better to start with the some of the data delivery and trying to understand and eventually end up in the master data. But if you're somewhere in the middle, then you're basically, I think that you have covered half journey and you basically go into the rest of the journey. That's how basically we interact with the client, and that's how basically when we see those changes happening, it's not in just one go. Let's have the phase wise manner or approach.
Avinash, the next question is for you. So do you think that the ROI for master data management really justified even for small businesses?
I think, the short answer to that is yes. In fact, I was in my opening comments when I was thinking if there could be a RODI instead of a ROTI, return on data invested, acronym which will come around. I think, yes, absolutely. I think, one of the things I referred to in my opening remarks was the study which we did for the impact of COVID on the MSME. And one of the biggest concern for those guys was access to markets. It was even a bigger concern than access to finance. So access to markets requires you to have data, to use tools to acquire new clients, to manage new clients, to reach out to new clients, and all of that. So, I think elements of data are going to be useful for everybody, including smaller companies. So it doesn't need to be a mega thing at every level, but I think clearly there is a return to be had for company businesses of all size and business owners of all size. And I think that's going to be a cascading effect. The efficiency of the ecosystem will get better if everybody did that. The possibility of lowering cost of delivering your product or service, leading to a better return, or just faster transaction, faster payments, faster delivery, more assured delivery. All of that would be a return which can be quantified and captured because of superior and better managed data.
Avinash, one more question on DNV. This is on data security and privacy, because the GDPR coming in the picture. There's a lot of laws coming in. So how DNV is managing that entire data security and privacy from DNV's point of view?
No, I think as Arun said, we are a global firm. We've been in this business of managing data, B2B data. We're the largest keeper of B2B data, as Arun said, around 425 million entities. We have our unique IPs around things like the DUNS number, the TradeX program. So we are used to it, and I guess in some ways we are a little bit fortunate because we are also present in other geographies, which are actually our biggest markets, where some of these laws around data privacy and data quality standards and all of that have already been enacted, and we've already been through the process of making these happen on behalf of ourselves and our clients. So as the presence across the world allows us to have that knowledge and flexibility, and as these regulations come into India as well, we believe we are fully prepared to kind of enact them. We don't know what they will be, but whatever they are, we obviously, as every responsible corporate, will comply. And we hope that the regulations allow the ecosystem to become a lot more stronger, a lot more assured in terms of how data is shared, managed, and used, and that will lead to a better future in terms of everybody using that, and we are very confident and hopeful of that.
The next question is coming from from the media. Shivani from Business Standard is writing to us, and she wants to know that what continues, since we've done the research. So wanted to know what continues to be the biggest challenge as CIO even now, as they morph from the sideline of the discussion tables. This is both for business side challenges as well as the tech side challenges. If any one of you can throw some lights on that.
I heard the first part of the question. What is continues to be the biggest challenge for CIOs? And after that?
Even now, as they morph from the sidelines to the discussion table.
Right, okay. Maybe I'll take a first shot at it and then Arun can add to it. I think, I think Arun mentioned it, I mentioned some of my comments. Clearly, this thing is, I mean, who knows how this thing is going to take too long to wash out, but it is going to wash out ultimately. And the business, like all of things in the past and in business, things will focus again more and more in terms of the future and growth and making things do better and doing more at a cheaper cost. And that's where I think we are all picking up signals from the CIOs that really is going to be the center of plate discussion. So how do you grow the business? How, as CIO and as a partner, you are part of the growth process of the business. How is the business able to do a lot more effectively, more remotely, more faster, and at a cheaper price? So I think those are the concerns. If I was a CIO, those would be my concerns. Given what's happening in the ecosystem and how the ecosystem has evolved so rapidly over the last 14 years, specifically across all business segments, really, how does the CIO become really more relevant? And I think, as the question also says, really become center of plate discussion in a boardroom rather than being an adjunct. And we've seen that happen before for other CXO functions as well, how things have evolved from as businesses and things have happened, how these businesses functions have become a lot more important. So if I was a CIO, I would be really very excited, very keen to ensure that this really becomes center of plate discussion in terms of business strategy, in terms of alignment of various business SBUs, and in terms of delivering a superior product or service to the ultimate customer. So I think that's the bit which really should be exciting any CIO in today's world. Arun?
No, I think Yamnash, you covered everything. So thanks for that. I think it's mostly talks about the same thing. Overnight, we all have seen last year that overnight the things have changed in terms of the lockdown, and the CIO basically was really in the front line, and they managed, with the talk about enabling the workforce from the various remote and other stuff. Now, what has happened now we are in the somewhere. I would not be certain in terms of saying we are in middle of the second wave or we are declining second, but we are actually part of the second wave. The importance of that and the challenges to the CIOs basically have gone up in order to derive more value from that in the sense in order to continue to support workforce and keep them basically part of the organization, and most of the companies have taken various route. So those elements basically have changed. Now I was just saying that 55% of CIOs said that they're moving to the value creation rather than the rationalization and then some operational efficiency, which means the focus and the continuation of that element is now asked from the company, and that has to basically shape up and that has to be continued. So apart from that, we see it's a few months into this next wave. I think post pandemic or maybe post second wave, things might change, and maybe we can come back to you with more data and more insight.
Are you there?
I think with that, we close today's session. Thank you so much, Avinash and Dr. Singh, for the session today. I hope our viewers have enjoyed it. And in case anybody has any questions, please feel free to write to us at india@dnb.com. And thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you all, and have a good Eid and a good weekend or whatever you make of it. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.